On September 15, 2015, Petra Laszlo, a Hungarian camera operator, was at the border with Serbia. This was at the peak of the European migration crisis, where hundreds of thousands of people fleeing the Syrian civil war were crossing European borders trying to reach Germany, where Angela Merkel had promised them safe harbor. One of these people was Osama Abdul Mohsen and his family. They were trying to reach Germany when the Hungarian border police said, "Stop." He didn't stop. Laszlo, being on hand, decided to intervene. She tripped him. Pictures of this intervention spread across Europe, causing outrage. Laszlo was charged with essentially assault, but a few years later, she was acquitted. They said that she wasn't doing anything wrong, basically agreeing with her defense that she was just trying to help the police enforce the law. The Laszlo affair raises a lot of questions about what we owe to people engaged in principled resistance, because Mohsen easily could have been an illegal economic immigrant fleeing severe poverty to the wealthy global north. Do we owe them active assistance? Should we just stay out of the way? Or should we actually be like Laszlo and actively stop them from breaking our laws? These are the questions this video is going to look at. But it's a spicy one, so I think I gotta sit down. Okay, so in this video series and the book, I have made the case that people living in severe poverty have the right to resist the causes of their condition. I've looked at them as agents in themselves. This episode, we're going to flip the script and look at what we, and by we I mean decadent Westerners living in the global north in supreme luxury, owe to them. Because we have to owe them something, right? This is because the right of resistance is a right. Duh. And rights produce claims on other agents and institutions to behave in a certain sort of way. This can be a negative right. So for example, let's say I have a milkshake. Then you have an obligation not to drink my milkshake, not to drink it up. You have a negative duty, a duty not to do something. Likewise, we could say that there are positive duties. Peter Singer gives us the case of a child drowning in a shallow pond. And you're walking by, you see the child, you can rescue them without any real cost to yourself. He says you have a moral obligation, a duty to save that child. This is a positive duty, a duty to do something. Now, when we talk about people resisting injustice, we owe them both positive and negative duties. Let's look at the negative ones first. One of the reasons the Laszlo case strikes us as being so outrageous is that it was an interference with someone exercising their rights. We protect people who are seeking asylum. We protect refugees. You shouldn't interfere with someone trying to get to safety. It's wrong. Now we can imagine this as being someone who is an illegal immigrant fleeing severe poverty to an affluent state. We shouldn't be tripping them at the border so they get caught by immigration authorities. We should simply mind our own business and not interfere. Now this is pretty simple. But negative duties are often reduced to interactional relations, right, between someone who's resisting and someone who is a bystander. But it is a bit more complicated. We need to consider our relationship with organizations as well, because oftentimes unjust social systems have institutions that are directly charged with suppressing people. Let's think about East Germany, because we always think about East Germany. So East Germany, its secret police was the Stasi, probably the most efficiently terrifying and terrifyingly efficient secret police of the 20th century. And there was a lot of them. For every one Stasi agent, there was 180 East German citizens. Compare that to the Soviet Union, where for every one Soviet citizen, there was about 600 intelligence servicemen. The East Germans were heavily policed, but it wasn't just the security services, it was the collaborators. It's estimated that between 1 and 1.5% of the East German population was actively collaborating with the Stasi. Think about that. Think about going to your place of work or your school. Every 100 people you saw, one person would be a stool pigeon for the Stasi. It might be your best friend. It might be your girlfriend or your boyfriend. It might be your parents, grandparents. When they opened the Stasi archives after the Berlin Wall fell, people were genuinely shocked at who was collaborating. And these collaborators were the respiratory organs for the police state. They enabled the Stasi to work so efficiently. Those people who worked with them were violating a negative duty of non-collaboration. So let's think about it in the context of global poverty and resistance. Let's say, hypothetically, there is a state in the world, and it is the most affluent state in the world, but it polices its borders rigorously. It has a highly militarized border security force. We'll call them Frost. Frost actively interferes with people escaping poverty, crossing the border illegally, puts them in jail, separates families, and then sends them back home. You have an obligation not to cooperate with Frost. Now, this doesn't mean that you should be sort of actively frustrating Frost. It just means that you're not diming people in. If you think someone you're working with might not be there illegally, mind your own business. Don't be a rat. Don't be a snitch. It's a simple principle. The final negative duty we have is a duty of non-obstruction. Now, in circumstances of injustice, there are often people who are trying to resist. Organizations. Think about the Underground Railroad during slavery. People would go to the slave states in the South, people like Harriet Tubman as conductors for the Underground Railroad, and help slaves get to either the free states or to British North America, where they would be guaranteed not to be returned to the South. They were engaged in resistance. And you shouldn't be frustrating the Underground Railroad if you were living in 19th century America. And this brings to mind the case of Henry Box Brown. Henry Box Brown escaped slavery in a pretty ingenious way. He mailed himself out of it. He sealed himself in a box, hence the nickname, and mailed himself to an abolitionist newspaper. And this became a cause célèbre, right? Everyone was talking about it. And this really frustrated Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass said, "You've made such a big deal out of this that no one will be able to do it again. You have closed off this avenue of escape. You should have just stayed stum and said nothing." So what can we say about negative duties? There's a duty of non-interference, interactionally. Don't stop people who are resisting. There's a duty of non-collaboration. Don't be a rat. Don't be a snitch. And there's a duty of non-obstruction. Leave organizations that are helping people alone. That closes up negative duties, but what about positive duties? If you watched the YouTube short about Cédric Caroux, you know that he was arrested for helping illegal immigrants cross into France. He argued that he had an obligation to do so. It was a positive duty. Do we have these positive duties to people resisting global inequality and severe poverty? I think we do. Positive duties are often controversial because they're demanding, right? People say they're too demanding on us. So let's think about Peter Singer's drowning child thought experiment. He says we have an obligation to rescue this child if we don't put ourselves at risk. Now, this is typically how duties of rescue are cashed out. If you risk your person, or if you risk your sort of things you have reason to value, you're not obliged to do them. They cannot be duties because they're too demanding. But of course, we are not in a bystander relationship. It's not like walking past a pond where there's a child drowning and you have no idea how they got in the pond. People like me have benefited from an unjust system. We are implicated. We are complicit. We are not simply here as bystanders. And because we are implicated in it, we don't have duties of rescue. We have positive duties of assistance and reparation to people who are resisting global inequality. Now, does this mean that you should get on your bike, go down to the border, and start helping people cross it illegally? No, that might be too much. But you do owe something. It could be something institutional. And the example I give is sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities exist in the United States as firewall jurisdiction where people's immigration status is not reported to federal authorities. So if you're a kid and you're going to school, but you happen to be in the country illegally, you don't have to worry about being dimed in by your teacher. Your teachers don't have an obligation to report you to immigration authorities. So you can rest easy. If you're working on a construction site and you get injured, but you're in the country illegally, you don't have to worry about going to the hospital or a doctor. They will not dob you in. You are safe. So what you can do to exercise your positive duty is to support sanctuary cities. You can vote for people who support them. You can vote for political parties who support them. You can exercise your institutional influence as a citizen to help support people exercise their right to resist injustice. Okay, what comes next? Let's have a little looky. Well, unless you want me to read the bibliography to you, we're done here. Thank you for watching this video series on global poverty, injustice, and resistance. I hope that you found it informative. I certainly had fun making it. I hope it's changed the way that you think about people who live in severe poverty and how they are still active agents who can do things to resist the causes of their oppression. You know what? I don't think I'm going to be finished with YouTube, though. I've enjoyed making these videos. I think they've gotten better as time goes on, maybe a little bit. And I want to keep doing it, so long as people are watching. Now, what I'm going to do next, I'm not sure. But the only way you'll find out is if you keep tuning in. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.
I love you.
Anaya S. James, Indigenous Peoples and International Law, 2nd edition, Oxford University Press, 2004. Anderson, Mary B. The Giving and Receiving in Relationship, Inherently Unequal? In Humanitarian Response Index, edited by Development Assistant Research Associates, 97 to 105 Basingstoke, Palgrave. No, I can't do it anymore.